Hi everyone, this is Jesi from Literary Gladiators. Nice to see everybody again. I hope everybody's having a great holiday season and staying warm this winter. I'm here today to talk about my top 10 books of 2019. Can you believe the year is over? I feel like just yesterday I did my top 10 books of 2018. So I'm going to start with an honorable mention. I'm going with the book Junkie that we read. It was a I thought it was a great book. The reason why it didn't quite make it to my top 10 was because I felt like I just enjoyed and related a little bit more to the other books that I chose. But this one I wanted to make an honorable mention because I know, especially the area that I'm from, or, even in the United States, there's a lot of people who struggle with addiction. And I am not one of those people, but this gave me a little bit of insight as to, the life and mindset of somebody who does struggle with addiction. So, I did enjoy that book, and I wanted to make a little honorable mention for it. But I'm gonna go ahead and move along and talk about my number 10 pick, which was The Last Wish. So this was actually a book that my boyfriend had me read. It's by, and I can't say his name, Sapkowski, Andres, whatever the name is. So this is a book that my boyfriend actually had me read. He's really big into the Witcher series. So he had me read this, and I actually really enjoyed it. It was a collection of stories that the Witcher just kind of like went through and did things, and it was a fun read. I enjoyed it. It was very entertaining. Nothing I would go and say a literary genius for, but it was something quick and fun and enjoyable. So that was my number 10 pick. Let's see, number 9, Old Man in the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. This has always been a fond book of mine. I didn't like it a lot when I first read it in high school, but as I've gotten older and reread it, I think there's a lot in this book, despite how short it is. It's just, it's really a very inspiring book about, not giving up on what you want, what you need, and just, pushing forward when you have to. Because if there's anything that life throws at us, it's obstacles that we have to overcome. And Old Man in the Sea is just a great book that, puts kind of puts that into a beautiful story, pushing through obstacles. So that's my number 9 pick. Let's see, number 8. I read It by Stephen King. I have a lot to say that I haven't gotten to say yet because I still have to do the review and discussion video. But with it's incredibly scary, but also so strange at the same time. I read through it. I didn't really think that it was that scary. I thought it was very weird. But then I found myself getting scared when I was by myself, not reading the book. It was very, very weird. And I think, Stephen King did a nice job with that. And he told a great, very in-depth story with this book. I might even say maybe a tiny bit too in-depth because it's a huge book. But overall, Stephen King is a fantastic writer. It kept me engaged, kept me reading. And like I said, even though I wasn't necessarily scared while I was reading the book, I found myself walking a little bit faster to my car in an empty parking lot or faster to my front door from my car. So, he obviously did his job right there. So number 8 is It by Stephen King. So number 7 is Memoirs of a Geisha by Arthur Golden. I loved this book. We read it earlier this year. You'll find that a lot of my books that I've picked out are books that I read with everybody. But Memoirs of a Geisha I felt was a very powerful reading. It highlighted, some of the struggles of women in Japan, geishas in Japan prior to, World War II, and how their lives were basically lived, how they were these human beings that had to be living, breathing canvases, arts. Like I don't quite know how to explain it. I just thought it was a beautiful story. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, that was my number 7 pick. I always feel like I'm going through these too quickly. Number 6, I chose Boy's Life by Robert McCammon. I surprisingly enjoyed that book. I really didn't think I was going to like it as much as I did. Um, I felt that it was just one of those stories that was relatable. And if you kind of go back to the discussion, we talk about how, you know, how the author kind of melds the magic of being a child with the reality of being a child, and how they can just kind of go together well. How, when you have a kid who believes something's magic, he's gonna think that it's magic even though it's not, and how he just kind of like goes around and sees all these different things and these different points of his life that are kind of drawn out, and emphasized, that the author even says, he goes back and realizes that these things were important when at the time they weren't. I just felt like it was a very well put together book. The author did an excellent job, narrating everything. So I had to make that number 6. I really, really enjoyed it. Highly recommend everybody reads it. Moving on to the top 5. And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. That was so fun to read. And I'm new to Agatha Christie this year, so I might find that maybe I like some of her other books more. But I did have to kind of choose between Murder on the Orient Express and Then There Were None. And I really liked this one. This one just keeps you really engaged, and it's got that fun little poem in it. And, just, I loved it. I loved the who done it, try to figure out who it is. I couldn't get enough. I really enjoyed And Then There Were None. So that one made it to the top 5. Number 4, I chose Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert. So I read that one on my own on my road trip back in April. And I felt like it was just a very inspiring book that really, kind of delves into the whole idea of like finding yourself, I guess, in a sort of way. I know I mentioned in my review of the book that it helped, or it can help you kind of realize, I don't even know how to explain it. It's like she was going through depression and anxiety, and that was how she kind of came out of it, was going and finding herself. And I know a lot of people don't have the money to do that, but sometimes, that alone time and going and doing the things that you thought you couldn't do, can really, pull you out of that and make you see that life is good. And you don't need anybody to be happy. You don't need anything to be happy. You just need to know who you are and love yourself, and, accept yourself for who you are and do the things you want to do. And that's how you're going to find that perfect balance and be happy. And I feel like that was just a really inspiring book that really, I could really relate to, especially at the time I read it. It worked for me. I feel like everybody, man or woman, should read this book, because she touches on depression and anxiety a lot, and it's a great book. So Eat, Pray, Love, Elizabeth Gilbert is number 4. Number 3, I went with Shutter Island, and give me a second, I can't remember who read it. Dennis Lehane. Thank you, Josh. I was just like, I have it here somewhere. I just can't find it. Yep, Dennis Lehane. That was such an excellent book. He is so good with his details, and I love details. And again, it was just one of those books that you're so engaged, and you're not sure if what he's saying is true, if what's happening is actually happening. It's just very thrilling and suspenseful, and just, I really, really liked it. I'm so glad we read it. It was on my reading list for years, and we finally got to it, and I'm so happy because it was such an excellent book. So excellent. So my number two spot goes to Stephen King with The Green Mile. That was an excellent read. I feel like it has to go unsaid as to why he's number two. Stephen King is an excellent writer to begin with, and The Green Mile is an amazing story. He really did a great job with this one. So far, this has been my favorite Stephen King read. It's just so enlightening, so powerful. There's many different ways to look at this book, and to look at the characters in it. It's relatable. Everybody knows a Percy. Everybody knows, these men. And then you have the miracles that happen in it that I feel like just they're awe-inspiring. It's for sure my favorite Stephen King book. It definitely deserved the number two spot on my list. However, I did have to go and give my number one spot to Chris Kyle, An American Sniper. I felt like that book was just incredible. I don't know how else to explain it. It was, again, one of those books that I'd been meaning to read that I just hadn't gotten around to. And I had suggested it for Literary Gladiators, and we finally got to read it. And I'm so happy that we did because, again, it's one of those books that just kind of puts you in the shoes of somebody else, that you could in no other way be in those shoes. Just the things he did were horrifying and amazing at the same time. It was a very eye-opening book to the other side of the war that not a lot of people see or hear about. I felt like his voice was really heard. He didn't, really baloney around with anything. He just, he said what he needed to say, and it was very well put together. It's definitely my favorite book of the year. It was, I don't even know what else to say about it. I really, really loved the book. And I personally admire Chris Kyle, for the type of person that he was, and how he stands in American history. So, American Sniper, Chris Kyle is my number one spot. I feel like it was very hard to pick this year. It was hard to pick last year, but it was really hard to pick this year, because we read so many great books, and then I read so many good books on my own, and I had so much fun with it. Guys, I hope you get to pick up some of these if you haven't already. They're all fantastic. Don't forget my honorable mention, Junkie, which I do also recommend you pick that up as well. So guys, I hope everybody had an amazing 2019 and on to 2020. So excited. All right, guys, keep reading. Bye-bye.